Welcome to the Bringing Intimacy Back show, where intimacy is real. If you desire to intimately connect with yourself, significant other, children, family, friends, community, and higher power, then this is the show for you. We explore intimate topics, inspiring life stories, spirituality, and insightful tips on strengthening relationships. The show is hosted by Dr. April and her co-host, Coach K. Let's get this episode of the Bringing Intimacy Back show started. We share with you today the secret power to intimacy to create the life you love or love the life you create. Now here's your host, Dr. April, and her co-host, Coach K.
Welcome to the Bringing Intimacy Back show, where intimacy is real. Welcome to today's show. As you see, it's just me, Dr. April, is spending some time with family. So you have me today. And today we do have a great topic. We have an amazing guest. But before we get into that, just want to give you a few reminders that we have. So the topic today is overcoming the impact of pornography on marriage with Timothy Reigle. Now, before we get started with every show, we always talk about our charity of the month. And of course, this month is no different. So this month's charity of the month is Stalking Prevention Awareness and Resource Center. This is a place that is dedicated to, it's a federally funded project that provides education and resources about the crime of stalking. SPARK, which is the acronym, aims to enhance the response to stalking by educating the professionals tasked with keeping stalking victims safe and holding offenders responsible. This is a super important charity, so I definitely think you should take a little bit of time and check it out. The website is scrolling across the bottom, but I'll let you know it is www.stalkingawareness.org. And if you feel so kind, definitely donate so we can get that education out to everyone. Now, let's talk a little bit about our guest that we have today, Timothy Reigle. So Timothy is the founder of Into the Wilderness Ministries. His mission is dedicated to helping men transform their lives by renewing faith and re-energizing families and restoring masculinity. He is the author of the book, Living Porn Free, 10 Steps to Recovery, Redemption, and Renewal. And as a coach, he has helped hundreds of men overcome addiction to porn and sex, save their marriages, and become better men. He's also a licensed funeral home director, a chaplain, a worship leader, and most importantly, he's a husband and father. So while you all get all of your questions together for Timothy, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to jump right into things with our special guest, Timothy Reigle.
Are you wanting a vacation in paradise? Vacation to reignite the passion, the desire in your relationship? Vacation counseling is just for you. We are deeply committed to your success as a couple. Our couples counseling retreats are exclusive, effective, and intimate. At Vacation Counseling, you will benefit from a combination of couples counseling, intimacy counseling, and individual counseling while you and your partner enjoy a relaxing vacation in sunny Southwest Florida. If you are interested in vacation counseling, please visit us at vacationcounseling.com for more information on prices and packages.
Welcome back and welcome to our special guest, Timothy. How are you?
I'm doing great.
I don't know why it sounds like I'm yelling. So if I'm yelling at you, my apologies. I guess, when we have great topics, you get so excited that the voice is like, "Bah!" But let's kind of dive right into this.
Sure.
Because number one, it's a great topic. So what is it about this that you said, hey, I am the person that needs to step up and speak about it?
Sure. Well, I'll be honest, it wasn't a plan I really had for my life. It kind of happened on its own. I after overcoming my own addiction and recovery, healing and restoring my marriage, I began being able to have opportunities to start mentoring to some young men through my church,
Mhm.
and through them realize just how bad porn addiction is amongst all men, but especially young men, teenagers, early 20s. So I was able to mentor them some and kind of encourage them and be like, hey, I just came out of this, and let me help you, and let me, I'm here for you, I can help you. And so, as often happens, when we open the door just a little bit, God kind of kicks it wide open.
Oh yeah.
So he opened up other opportunities for me to share more, and the more I did, the more people resonated with it, and the more I realized these people need help. So it kind of got laid on my heart that some of the reason I came through all of this was that I could turn around and help other men through it.
Mhm.
So that's some of how I came about to do it, and I've been doing it almost about 4 years now that I've been coaching other men, and helping them find freedom.
Mm. That is awesome. And so just thinking about, because you started with, talking about kind of you had to
Mhm.
get to this place too. So what really prompted you to even recognize and address your porn addiction?
Sure. I always knew it was wrong. There was never a time where I really tried to justify it or make excuses for it, or defend it. I knew it was wrong from the time I was a teenager up until married and with kids. I always knew it was wrong. But that wasn't enough to overcome the addiction.
Mhm.
Um, so what started as kind of innocent things as a teenage boy, you know, kind of just teenage boy curiosity, you know, escalated into a full blown addiction. I got married, we had kids, and continued into that, and even escalated into things beyond porn addiction. I had affairs and hookups and things like that as well. And I saw over time the damage it did to my marriage, and we separated for over a year. Thankfully, we ended up getting back together, and so a lot of ups and downs and ins and outs, and getting caught and doing better, and then falling back into it, getting caught again, and kind of a vicious cycle. Um, what happened the last time was that I got caught by some friends of mine about
Oh.
6 years ago now. And that was kind of, for some reason, that was the wake up call for me, which in hindsight kind of breaks my heart that it wasn't all the damage I'd caused in my marriage and the pain I'd caused my wife and my family and everything else that kind of got me to change. It was these two friends kind of finding out and disowning me basically. But that's how the Lord worked, and He got that to speak through to me, and I got some serious help from a pastoral mentor of mine who helped me really figure out what was actually going on. It wasn't just that I was just this horny pervert who couldn't control himself, or that I just needed to try harder, or I just needed to pray harder, or he helped me kind of understand that, hey, there's something behind this, and you're using this to cope with something, to escape, to run away from things that I couldn't deal with. And so he really helped me fix it from the core, not just treat it like a bad habit that I just need to try harder to quit, but that it was something I needed to heal from. And that's something that's stuck with me, and that I teach men now, that this isn't something you quit, it's something you heal. And so I had to heal that from within, work on those parts of myself where I was using porn to deal with, to cope with, to escape from. And that's what helped me find the lasting recovery. Um, I'm very thankful that my wife and I were able to heal our marriage, that she was able to have forgiveness in her heart and work towards healing our marriage. And our marriage is stronger now than it's ever been. Um, and so, thankfully we came through all that, and our marriage is strong, and I'm doing strong. and now we're able to help other people.
That is good. And I do know that sometimes adversity can absolutely kind of bring you closer together sometimes.
Right.
Because then you seem to be more aware of things and you look at it differently.
Yeah, it certainly puts things in perspective. When it's just kind of a stupid thing, but when you're husband and wife and you argue about something stupid like doing the dishes, when you've gone through major trauma like we have and overcame that and are stronger than ever, it makes those things seem like not such a big deal, right? Which they aren't. So it's helped kind of put things in perspective that this isn't a fairy tale happily ever after, but we're two broken people who have found healing and redemption and are growing now together.
So when you were going through the recovery journey, what were some of the challenges that you faced?
So some of it was kind of twofold. And a lot of things I divide into kind of more the physical, logistical things and kind of more the emotional things, right?
Mhm.
So the physical things are dealing with kind of situations, kind of things that might be triggering, things that might cause me to have that urge to act out, kind of discovering what those things are. I had to work hard on this. It wasn't something that you could just kind of passively work on. I mean, this took intense effort. I had to rebuild the routine of my life. I had to rebuild new habits. I had to learn new ways of thinking and new ways of dealing with things. The hardest part of it was the other side, which was the emotional side. And that's kind of facing myself, facing some of these wounds in my life and some of these emotional pain that I was using porn to escape from.
Mm.
So I had to go back and kind of deal with those and learn to deal with those in a healthy way.
Right.
And that's not easy. And that's why a lot of people go back, end up relapsing and go back. And I did several times. I mean, it wasn't just one day I said I'm done and I walked away and have been perfect ever since. I mean, I had relapses for a while. And so overcoming that and not getting discouraged. So many guys give up too quickly. They think they go, 2 weeks or 3 weeks with nothing and have a slip up and they think that's the end. Oh, well, I screwed up again, throw in the towel.
Mhm.
And we have to learn to overcome that. There's a lot of ups and downs. We have to focus on progress over perfection. And I think having that perseverance was one of the hardest things to find. And even so, it took me 10, 15 years to find it and to finally have the courage and the perseverance and the determination to get through it. And of course, obviously the ups and downs with healing our marriage. I mean, there's going to be good days, there's going to be bad days. I'm going to have good days, I'm going to have bad days. And so is she, with
Right.
as far as healing from it. So, those were some of the biggest challenges, I think, for me.
Mm. And you did mention your wife because that's also part of the, you know, the journey,
Hmm.
because you both are going to have those days. So how can someone rebuild trust and intimacy with their spouse after addressing the addiction?
Sure. Sure. I believe that marriages can be saved from this. Not all marriages can be saved from this. There's certainly occasions that there's so much damage it can't be fixed. I'm not, you know, um, ignorant of that, but I think it can be fixed. And I firmly believe that forgiveness is a decision, not a feeling.
Hmm.
And my wife would tell you the same thing. When we came to the mutual decision that we were going to work this out no matter what, and she chose to forgive me, whether she felt like it or not, whether she was still pissed as hell at me, she had to choose that. And that's hard. And I'm eternally grateful that she did, because that's not something I could force upon her. I could do all the work I wanted to, but, ultimately it involved both of us. And I think a lot of people give up too soon. As soon as somebody finds out that their partner's struggling with porn addiction or sex addiction, they're out the door immediately.
Right.
Which in certain scenarios are certainly justified in that. But I'm a firm believer that I stood before God and my family and everybody else, and so did she, and we promised to stick to this till death do we part, and I took that seriously. Even though I had violated some of those vows, I still took that seriously, and we said, no, we're in this for the long haul. And this isn't something that we just get rid of because one of us screwed up. Now, it's a big screw up, don't get me wrong. It's not I'm not minimizing the damage by any stretch.
Right.
But it is possible to heal from it. And I think a lot of people need to know and hear from more stories of people like myself who have overcome it, that there is hope, that it is possible, that it's not just the end of everything, that you can not only heal, but actually be better than you were before.
Yeah. So thinking about the relationship during that time, how did the actual porn addiction, how did that affect the relationship and intimacy with your spouse?
Sure. Well, it certainly becomes a wall between each other. And one thing I'll say all the time, and it's hard for wives to understand this. If I'm speaking from the male perspective because that's mine, but I know sometimes it is reversed. But porn addiction typically has nothing to do with sex. It has to do with pain, right? It's not that all these guys are just, horny perverts who can't control themselves. They're doing this for a reason. And it's because it's how they've learned to cope and how they've learned to deal with pain. And in many cases, it's not that they don't find their wife attractive or they don't want to have sex with their wives. My wife and I actually had a very active, healthy sex life throughout the time that I was struggling with this. And it was hard for her to understand. It's hard for a lot of wives to understand that it sounds kind of crass, but it didn't have anything to do with her.
Right.
It had to do with me and my being able to deal with these things and how I manage them, and so, but it certainly does put a wall there because it affects you intimately because I'm using, instead of sharing my pain and hurts with her so we can grow closer together on an intimate level, emotionally and spiritually, I was running away to this to do it, plus all the obvious lying, betrayal, deceit, and all of that goes along with it. Another thing that happens is that people get so addicted to the porn that they actually prefer that to real sex. And so I encounter a lot of people who say, I'd just rather, watch porn and masturbate than have sex with my wife. It's simpler and easier, And a lot of that is because, first of all, porn affects your brain in that way that you get to the point where you need porn to be able to get or maintain erections. A lot of men struggle with erectile dysfunction because they watch so much porn. But also because it's tied to such an emotional thing, like I've talked about, when there's discord in the marriage, they don't know how to handle that, so they run to porn to deal with it. And wives think, well, he's running the porn because he doesn't find me attractive or he thinks I'm ugly or he wants somebody else. It's not necessarily the case. It's that he doesn't know how to handle this emotional things, and that's how he learns to deal with it. I say all the time, sexless marriages don't cause porn addiction. Porn addiction causes sexless marriages.
Right.
A lot of times these wives, it's not like they're, they don't want to have sex with their husbands. It's that he's gotten himself to the point where he can't or can't get to that point and prefers porn over that. And so it puts that divide there and creates that wedge between, and then and everything just compounds on top of itself. It drives that wedge further and further, and then eventually you go further and further apart. And it takes removing this addiction to be able to get back to that point and heal it.
And I love that the detail that you gave on that, and making it very clear that the addiction piece of it doesn't have anything really to do, and just like any other addiction. So many people, they don't want to recognize that porn addiction is a real addiction.
Oh, absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
and it's bigger than just, every once in a while watching, because there are some people who can watch porn and just like, that's just
Sure.
nothing. Are you able to speak just a little bit about the difference? Because there may be somebody that watches this that says, "Oh my gosh, I watched porn 3 days last week. I think I'm addicted, and because of this, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z." Are you
Mhm.
able to just speak a little bit about the difference between having that addiction and what that really is versus someone who just casually
Right.
catalogs through
Right.
porn?
Personally, I don't believe there's any healthy amount of porn. I don't believe that there is really such a thing as casually watching it. I mean, there's maybe some people who can watch that and not have a compulsive or an impulsive behavior towards it, but I still don't think it's healthy. And I have, people come to me all the time. Oh, well, we watch porn together, and which I think is really messed up, and all those type of things. But there's kind of two types of the addiction to me. There's a biological addiction. There's the emotional addiction. So the biological addiction is where your brain actually gets addicted to the dopamine and the serotonin and the other chemicals that are released upon orgasm. And your
Mhm.
brain actually creates new neural pathways to that you become dependent on that, just like you would become dependent on alcohol or come dependent on smoking or drugs or anything else. It affects scientific studies have shown it affects the brain the same as heroin addiction. So there's that part of it, but there's also what I've already talked about, which is the emotional addiction, where it becomes how you deal with everything. If you're stressed, you go to porn. If you're excited, you go to porn. If you're, whatever emotion you feel, porn is how you deal with it and how you cope with it. My response to people who say, "Oh, well, I only watch it, once in a blue moon or whatever, and it's no big deal." My response is, "Okay, then don't ever watch it again." And if you can't do that, then you have a problem, right? So, I mean, the definition of addiction is doing something that you can't stop, even if you want to, right? So, try to stop. And if you can't, then let's talk. And I work with men who are watching porn 4 or 5 times a day, and I work with men who maybe watch it once every 6 weeks, but it's still a problem for them.
Mhm. And I'm glad you gave that big spectrum of the types. So, what advice do you have for individuals that are struggling with porn addiction and its impact on relationships outside of course, contacting you? Because that would be, what I would think. But
Right.
what
Right.
what advice would you be able to give them?
Sure. The first step to me is it's kind of cliche, but the first step is to admit that you have a problem, right? And the second is to get help and find help. I tried myself for years to. I was just like, you know what? I can stop this on my own. I don't need counseling. I don't need help. I don't need a coach. I don't need a mentor. I don't need any of these things. And it didn't really get me anywhere. And I've worked with other number of men who felt the same thing until they finally got exasperated enough. And you're like, you know what? I need help. And that's what made the difference. I always say that in order to fix the marriage, you have to fix the man first. So if a man is struggling with this, you have to work on the addiction before you can work on healing the marriage, because you'll never hear it has to be in that order. Now, obviously, you're going to work on fixing the marriage at the same time too, but this has to be the priority, and sometimes that takes some time. And somebody, asked a question about being patient with her husband who has that addiction, and unfortunately, sometimes that's what it takes. It takes patience, you know, and that's hard. And I get it, because there's a lot of hurt and there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of betrayal there. So it's hard to be patient. It's hard to be forgiving when you've been hurt by someone you love. I get that. But that's what it takes for healing. He has to fix himself first. And you have to overcome the addiction. And once the addiction is under control, then you can start healing the marriage, because the trust won't start to come back until the addiction's dealt with.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer too that trust can be restored. I don't believe in the whatever they call it, the broken vase theory. You know, once it's broken, it's never really as strong as it once was, and I don't believe that at all. It's not easy by any stretch, and it takes
Right.
time. It takes a
Yep.
long time, but I firmly believe that it can be healed and restored. So I would say, yeah, fix the man first, fix the addiction first, then fix the marriage or
Mm,
relationship or
I,
whatever it might be.
I like that.
Mhm.
And in that order, and I'm with you. That
Mhm.
whole vase thing, no, it absolutely. The only thing you can't come back from is death, and some people get revived. So there you go. Um, Now, before we wrap everything up, this is something we normally ask at the top, but I wanted to hear from you first, and give our audience just a general feel for the great things that you have. Because yes, I know that this is a huge problem in the world that so many don't even recognize that it's the actual with many addictions, but especially with this one here. So I appreciate that you are doing the work that you're doing. But this is the Bringing Intimacy Back show. So I want to ask you, what does intimacy mean to you?
Hmm. To me, intimacy is all about connection, and whether it be emotional connection, spiritual connection, mental connection, or physical connection. And physical doesn't have to mean sexual, right?
Mhm.
And I think of intimacy as a pyramid, right? To me, sex is the pinnacle of that pyramid because sex is the most intimate act. And a lot of people get this backwards, where they think if you have sexual intimacy, you will get all those other levels of intimacy in their lives. But trickle down economics doesn't work with intimacy. You have to have those foundations, the non-sexual physical intimacy, the emotional intimacy, the spiritual intimacy. And once those are built, then the sexual intimacy happens naturally and how it should happen. But our society, our world, and porn is a big reason for this, has that backwards.
Mhm.
So they think if you have sexual intimacy, you get all those other things. So what a lot of guys are actually looking for on the emotional level with porn is they're looking for intimacy. They're looking for connection. They're looking for love, to be accepted, to be cared for, to have that emotional, intimate connection, that mental connection, that spiritual connection. But they've been trained to think that because sex is the most intimate act, that that will provide it, when it's actually the opposite. And if you talk to any couple that has a happy, healthy marriage for a long time, they'll tell you that that you connect on all those other levels first, and it makes the sex way better.
Yep.
And that's my understanding of intimacy, and that's how I choose to think about it, and how I explain it to people, to get them to understand that intimacy does not equal sex. Sex is a part of intimacy, but it's not equal. There's all these other layers to it, and those layers are just as important, if not more important, for the in the sexual intimacy.
Mm, thank you. I love that. We all have to remember the pyramid. Now, for those who are watching now or that's going to watch later, and they say, you are the person that I need to talk to because I think that I do have this addiction. How do people get in touch with you? And if there are any programs or anything that you have upcoming, share that with us,
Mhm.
please.
Sure. So the best way to get in touch with me is online, either through social media, on Instagram and Twitter or X or whatever it's called. Is at Timothy Reigle, just my name, and same as my website's timothyreigle.com. Primarily, what I focus on is one-on-one coaching. So I work one-on-one with men to help them overcome the addiction, help them heal the addiction, and help them fix their marriages. I don't work with couples. I don't work with ladies. I just work one-on-one with men. Where, as before, I talked about fix the man and fix the marriage. I work on fixing the man first. So I also have my book, Living Porn Free, which is available on Amazon and other areas too. That's a great resource for people to help get started on their recovery.
Awesome. And we have that website going across the screen here. But I want to thank you so much, Timothy, for being a guest here and sharing and giving insight on such a delicate topic that affects so many households. And that you were open to share your story as well, which is super important, I'm pretty sure, for potential clients that are coming along. So thank you for being our guest today. And
Absolutely.
we're gonna go to a quick commercial and then we'll be right back.
Are you a business professional? Dr. April Brown's latest book is for you. Whether you are newly hired or managing a team of employees, her 30 intimacy-driven business principles will help you progress towards career success. Learn how to show up as your best self at work, what it means to cultivate a meaningful career, and how to avoid burnout, all while living up to your highest professional potential. Improving Intimacy, the book for business professionals, is available on Amazon in Kindle, Audible, and paperback. Search Dr. April Brown on Amazon to view all her books on improving intimacy for yourself, spouse, spirit, and more.
Welcome back to Bringing Intimacy Back, where intimacy is real. That was such a great discussion, and I'm so appreciative of Timothy coming by. And I know he touched on, really lightly because he works with the men and not necessarily with the couple as a whole. So as a wife, the question he touched on it a little bit, what can the wife do to be patient with a husband who is recovering through this addiction process? And the word is in the question. It's just that patience. And even with that is making the choice to be patient. And if you're going to make that choice to be there and be that rock, is to now start listening with more than just your ears. Start listening with your eyes and all of your feelings so that you can understand, hear, and be that supporting role for your partner as they go through that recovery journey. So, great topic. And again, if you are looking to work with Timothy, the website is simply his name, and on social media as well, TimothyReigle.com. You can look him up so that you all can work together. Now, we have some amazing shows that are coming up in the near future. So on February the 1st, we have Men, Loneliness, and Social Isolation with Jason Lang. And then on February the 8th, we have the 10 best date night ideas for an unforgettable evening. That's going to be with myself and Dr. April. And then on February the 15th, right after Love Day, we have Spice Up Your Love Life. Sexercise for a fun time. You don't want to miss that. And if you are watching us live right now, or you're coming back and catching that replay, please feel free to drop those questions in the chat. I'm pretty sure that we will check back and we'll make sure that Timothy can come back and answer some of those questions, or you can contact him directly. Make sure that you are following us on all social media platforms. That would be Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, which is now X, and Instagram. And let us know, what are some things that you want to hear more about? And don't forget about Spark, our charity of the month, where we are highlighting an organization that talks about and educates the community on stalking prevention. So this has been another amazing episode of Bringing Intimacy Back, where intimacy is real. And we will catch you back here next week. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Bringing Intimacy Back, where intimacy is real. You can also find us at bringingintimacyback.com, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Dr. April Brown's 7th book series, Improving Intimacy, is now on Amazon. We'll see you next Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Don't forget to follow, share, and subscribe.